When looking for the king of podcasts, you're at the wrong channel.
Well, excuse me!
Looking for good ideas for life? You're far from good hands.
Hey, bud, what's your problem?
If you think the listener is always right, you're far from the right place.
Out of order! Even in the future, nothing works!
Hosted by a Northeasterner by birth, but a rebel by choice.
Are you threatening me?
If you want a host that floats between love and madness,
and we know the night is always gonna be here anyway. Thinking of you's working up my appetite. Looking forward to a little afternoon delight.
then play on and listen to Crazy Train Radio.
All right, guys, listen to this blues riff and B. Watch me for the changes and try and keep up, okay?
Within the gaming world, there are your general gamers, but then there are those that enjoy the dark underbelly of gaming. If you're one of those that enjoy the dark underbelly of gaming, we certainly got the place to send you. Scorpion Lair Games. That's right, Scorpion Lair Games is the creators of the true crime hit Killers, the card game. Let's not forget they also have Killers Clothing Company, their profiler game, and things like the 5-Minute Murder channel on YouTube. And we certainly can't forget the new book that is certainly a hit, Beyond the Headliners, True Crimes, Myths, and Legends. Make sure you visit Jeff and the Scorpion Lair Games on Facebook and everywhere today.
Hey, this is Jamison Newlander. I was Alan Frog in the movie The Lost Boys. You're listening to Crazy Train Radio.
Hey folks, it's your least favorite host in the podcast world, Croc, Jonathan Steele. And boy, do we have a good one for you today.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, this next guest was known as an active kid that went to NYU to study theater. However, many fans know this next guest from films such as the classic remake of The Blob that came out in 1988, and of course, The Lost Boys, as he was known as Alan Frog, that was one of two vampire hunting brothers alongside Corey Feldman. So let's go ahead and welcome Mr. Jamison Newlander.
Hello.
So, Mr. Jamison Newlander, how the hell are you, sir?
Yes. Good. How you doing?
I can't complain. Nobody will listen on that anyway. So, I guess first and foremost, to get out of the way, we will put this in here. You are going to be at Scarefest in Lexington
Yes.
coming up in October.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I know or I shouldn't say I know and assume anything, but from what I've
Mhm.
heard, the convention scene for you have taken it a little more seriously in recent years. So, are you looking
Yeah.
forward to this
Yeah.
particular show? And can you talk about
Yeah, I
your
am. Yeah. Well, you know what I realized the other day is that we've been doing conventions. I mean, I've been doing conventions like at least a couple of years since 2005.
okay,
That's when, or maybe at least one a year, but for, so 2005 is when we were first approached, us Lost Boys were first approached by Erin Gray. I don't know if you know who she is. She was
yeah,
an actress. She was on Buck Rogers, and what was the other space one? She was on something.
I
In
know
any
who
case,
Erin is
so
though.
she had this, yeah, totally. And so she was like, hey, here's this thing where like, and I kind of, at 2005, before the convention scene, we didn't really know. It was hard to gauge how big it all was, how interested people were in all this stuff. I mean, it's like, and we got on the convention scene, because it was like in Aaron Gray is saying like, hey, we're going to fly you to England and everything, cover all the expenses and you might even, make some money. And I was like, come on, we're joking here. Lost Boys was whatever it was at that time, like not even 20 years, it was like 17 years earlier. But so that kind of, we started doing that. And then I've been doing it since then. But yeah, I would do like maybe 3 or 4 a year for a while. And then now I'm taking it a little more seriously because, we're approaching the 40th and, I'm kind of taking the legacy a little more seriously and also acting more now. That's, my kids are a little older. I'm kind of back to acting and that kind of thing more. So I'm embracing it a bit more.
Right on. And I should say it's funny that it's conventions have gone from like a seasonal thing into a almost like a year-round business per se, because there is a
Yeah.
business to
Yeah.
things. So,
Yeah.
but with that being said, and you mentioned it's coming up on the 40th anniversary of Lost Boys, which is hard to
Yeah.
believe. But
It's crazy.
well, would you say that's mostly what fans usually talk to you about, being a fog boy or frog boy there? Excuse me.
Yeah. You mean of the various things that I've done?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like my
When
biggest
you're
fan base is from
in the
Lost Boys,
convention scene, you know.
Yeah, there's also Blob.
Yeah.
More and more. There's actually people wanting Blob stuff. Because that's, I think, going to be it'll be in '88. It was in '88, so the next year
Yeah.
it'll be the 40th anniversary of the Blob. But I've gotten to see like Shawnee Smith and Kevin at some conventions and stuff, so that's kind of cool. And then also Bone Tomahawk's another one that I get attention for. I don't know if you know that movie.
Yeah, I've seen it.
It's sort of horror western.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a trippy
Which is
movie.
interesting. You were the mayor,
but-
correct? If I remember correctly.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
See, I pay attention
and
a little
so,
bit.
Yeah, you see that? You must have to have a lot of knowledge in your head to do all this podcasting thing.
It gives you migraines. Hey, Advil, come on as a
Yes.
sponsor. No. But to scope back a little bit, I found it interesting.
Mhm.
You were an active kid, but you ended up having to wear some casts and have braces to put your legs at a 90-degree level. What actually happened? And did that restrict you being a active kid?
Yeah, it was heartbreaking when it happened. It ended up being like a sort of a character building, experience. Like, so when I was about 7 or 8, I just was limping. I had this pain in my hip, and it was like, oh, is it this? Is it that? We went different doctors, and it was hard as hell. It was sort of subtle, but it was there. And then they discovered that it was this thing called at the time. Well, it was called leg perthes, is what it was called. But it was like this thing. Some people may know it currently as a necrosis. It's like the femur. I don't know if you can picture like the femur fitting into the your sort of pelvis, and then the femur somehow there's some pressure on it somehow, and it ends up like part of the bone atrophies, or it ends up getting like dying, kind of necrosis is kind of what it means. And so they're what they discovered is that if you take that pressure off of that femur, it'll grow back. The body's pretty amazing that way. So it's like, so they put my leg at this, legs at 90 degrees so that there wasn't pressure up on like the femur like this. So there was no pressure like that. And I was just in these races. So all that's great, except that for a kid who's 7, who's like, I loved sports. It was like my favorite thing to do, running around and baseball and everything. And then I was in casts at 90 degrees, and then for like 6 weeks, and then I was in a brace at 90 degrees, which wasn't quite as restrictive, but it was still pretty restrictive. I had crutches and everything for like 2 years.
Oy.
Actually.
So would you say, looking back now, sorry,
that
go
was
ahead.
that was really bad.
But would you say you are still able to be athletic at any point now, or do you find yourself not as active because of that?
Yeah, I've always been active, and since then it seemed to kind of get remedied with that thing, and then I was like, okay, I just kind of went with it, and I was always been really active in sports. I played racquetball for a long time, rollerblading, this kind of thing, and lately I haven't been doing as much sports because my kids aren't sports kids, really. We did that a little bit when they were younger, but they're, they have other interests and stuff. So we're not off doing sports all the time. And I would love to play some sports, a little more, in adult life, but it hasn't really held me back. I mean, I'm a little bit older, so my body's not like working to 1,000% the way I want it to.
But I think that's everybody, though.
Yes, I've been resisting. I'm trying to stay young, but it's only so much you can do. You know what I mean?
Yeah. In the words of Toby Keith, I'm not as good as I once was, but I was good once as I ever was. So
it's good.
Well, obviously, with that whole thing, I heard there was interest in going into the medical field, but you ended up. I think, would you say it was like a half-assed joke from your mother to, well, you better get in the commercials and acting so you can pay for the medical school?
Yeah, like secretly hoping I'm not going to be a doctor, but be an actor.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I think that the acting thing came about a little bit more. It's not like she was out there looking for it for me. It kind of came into being because of her friends that she knew, and they were like, Jameson's starting to become he's starting to move out of that awkward phase and actually kind of look like the expression they used was like an all-American kid, and I was like, wow, all-American kid, that's crazy. Like that I was, because I was, sort of was like a bit of a misfit, I thought. I mean, maybe we all feel that way, I think, in middle school and things like that. And so, so I think that she always saw the acting thing in me. And I think from the beginning, she could see that there was some talent in me. And so it was like, yeah, paying for medical school. But at some point it was like, okay, guess what? You're going to have to either decide, like, do you want to be a doctor, or like, you're good at this, do you want to do this? Maybe you should do this,
Right on. So, what did you end up studying at NYU? Was it acting, theater? Which direction did you end up going, would you say?
Yeah, I studied theater.
Okay. And because I noticed a lot of theater stuff within your background, both writing, acting, and all that fun stuff. So,
yeah, I love theater. I studied theater at NYU, and I kind of thought that I was going to be a theater actor. I love to do theater. I fancied myself kind of a more like sort of traditional actor in that way. But I couldn't really build that career as much as I wanted to in New York. I built it some, I didn't, but I never got to Broadway, but I did a lot of theater through my 20s. It was really amazing. And, all around the country, actually. So
places like Kentucky, actually, you could be in Vermont, etc.
Yeah, exactly. Those regional spots around the country, and then a couple, spot out in California, and it was a really amazing time. And I thought I was kind of building toward a theater career, really ultimately it came back to a film career, because that's, I think, where I love film, and there's a certain kind of experience to a film career that I was looking for, you know.
Absolutely. And I know, especially out in the theater scene in LA and Southern California, it's really not much of a opportunity to make a living, you know, like if you're, like you're saying, on
Yeah.
Broadway or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. And and even in New York at some point it was got so competitive, off Broadway roles. I mean, back before, in the generation kind of just before me, it was like, Broadway was like, you want to get to Broadway, but you might get to off Broadway and still you're getting paid and you're, doing this, you're, an actor and everything. But those off Broadway roles started to become much more competitive. And so it's really hard to make it there too, and it's hard to make a living as a theater actor really anywhere these days, I think. I mean, other than a few, except unless you sing, which is different. And I do sing now, but at the time I didn't reliably sing. So if you sing, you could do musicals, and there's all kinds of tours that you can do. Everybody wants to see a musical in their town, a Broadway musical come to their town. So there's a lot of people I knew who were singers who graduated with me. They, they were touring all over Europe and everything like that from day one. And I was jealous. I was like, I should learn how to sing at this point.
What would you say your style is, since you learned that later on?
My style? You mean, what do you mean?
The singing.
Yeah. Okay. So, I see what you're saying. I mean, I'm still kind of finding it, but I think I'm most comfortable singing like rock, some of the more poppy stuff I like to sing, but I don't think I have that kind of like beautiful voice in that way. But I do think I can rock out a bit,
Okay. And that's probably, similar to the area you grew up, Lost Boys, all that fun stuff. Now,
exactly.
And I'll get to that movie in a second, but
Okay.
you said something interesting that I was watching earlier and doing homework and stuff. And you weren't much of a party guy per se, but you were talking about also how there is two different things. There's the George Clooney technique, but there's also of the business behind the business, because like for Lost Boys, you skipped the premiere and all that because you were doing some theater stuff. But looking back, you probably should have been at the premiere, hobnobbing and all that other stuff. That's good and bad with it.
Yeah, I think that to sort of sum up, I think what I was getting at with all those things, and even in the contradiction of like not being a party guy, but kind of recognizing this idea of, I mean, and it's like, when I say not a party guy, I wasn't raised that way, really. I wasn't like doing that in high school. People were, and so, and the thing is that I kind of, people are like, oh, you didn't fall into the same, issues as like, River Phoenix, sadly, or, the Coreys and stuff. And it's like, yes, that is true. And I appreciate that. I'm happy about that. But I also think that there was a kind of, there's a bonding that goes on that I've found in theater and in film, in this business, around not just the work, but also the kind of blowing off steam after the work, going out, having drinks, playing pool, this kind of thing, bonding, going to a club, dancing, all this kind of stuff. And when I started to be able to kind of understand that and do that, relationships really get deeper than just trying to contain professional relationships to, like, you know what I mean? It's the element of having a good time with people is part of what this business is about, I think, and then it goes beyond to the longevity of those friendships and how those, pay off, as well as, in terms of the business, as well as pay off in terms of personal growth and happiness.
Yeah, because you were saying as well, it was, you thought at the time being great at your job was, okay, I'm going to know my lines, I'm going to know my marks.
Right.
But then there's, like you were just explaining, there's this other side to the business and the personal relationships
Yeah.
and stuff. But what was
Yeah,
this George
exactly.
Clooney technique you were talking about?
Okay, so again, it's like I'm probably going to get like a cease and desist letter from George Clooney's people because yeah, I've never cleared with him, and he doesn't even know that I'm using his name here. But the reason I call it the George Clooney technique is because, like, okay, first of all, I knew George Clooney. I was in a play with him in 1985, before Lost Boys, before much of his stuff that he hit it big for. He was on Facts of Life at the time, and I was like just sort of knocking around, getting some roles. We did a play together, and so I always kind of like, I always noticed what he was up to and everything, and so when I was watching the Oscars one year, and it's like, why is it that he's the coolest guy? Like, why is it that he's just so chill and he gets his message across super cool, and he, and I kind of put it together that in order to do that effectively, and I don't think he's conscious of this or if he's even doing it or whatever, it's that it's like you got to treat the Oscars the same way as you treat just like hanging out, that you're at a party, and you're talking to the press and you're talking to these guys, but they're all friends. You got to kind of act like they're all friends, and not act like, but it's best if you are sort of chill with the idea that you're really there to have a good time. And if you're having a good time and, you're talking and, building up your projects and, plugging your projects, and they're doing their job, they're getting their information. It's like, as long as you're having a good time, it's going to come across good, because that's what people want to see. They want to participate in that good time. That was my theory.
Okay.
What do you think? What do you think of that theory?
I like it, and I've seen that with a lot of the folks I've gotten to deal with in doing this and stuff. And
yeah,
there's also a sense too with that. You can tell if somebody's comfortable or not, I think. And
right. Yeah.
Maybe it's the Northeast attitude in me and, being from up here, but you can sense when somebody's real and having a good time and relaxed and all that. But you also can see, and you probably noticed from going to school in New York at NYU and all, we also will sniff out the bullshitters. If they're putting on a front, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah, totally. You got that bullshit detector, it's got to be strong. It really develops,
we're known for that here in the Northeast, that's for sure. There's stories about that I can tell all day long, but we're not gonna. But obviously best known for Alan Frog. You played one of the two vampire hunting brothers with Corey Feldman. But you've also revisited the role for The Thirst in 2010, and you made an appearance during the alternative endings for The Tribe in 2008. So obviously, when you do this role in the 80s, then life goes on. Then you get to revisit that character a couple times, like I said, in 2008 and 10. What is that like for you? Did you ever think that you'd be revisiting a role and the film itself, and I guess you could say the franchise? What's that like for you to be able to see the growth in 39 years of it so far?
Yeah, well, so like we were kind of dreaming of a sequel from the beginning. Joel was talking about a sequel from the beginning. I remember having a lunch with him at the Ivy, which is this like big like industry lunch spot, and they were like, he was like, yeah, we're gonna bring back the frogs and everybody, Sam and everybody, and everybody who was like left alive, and it was exciting, and that thought. So I it's been on my mind for a long time. But then when we got to even The Tribe, when we were shooting that scene in The Tribe, and part of the reason I think it ended in the special features is that it was just a little bit odd. I think just a little bit different than my character, and so it's going to make a big choice like that. I'm glad it ended in a special feature so that we could kind of go back to what was more like Alan Froggy, for the Thirst. But then in the Thirst, I remember Feldman saying to me that, like, okay, we got to revisit these characters. What are they like now? Now that they're our age, which at the time we were in our 30s. Wow. And so that was the first time I had really thought about actually playing that character. And it was good. I keyed into it again. It was hard because it was, it's different circumstances, trying to find what's that character in this situation, and how has he evolved? What's this last, period of time been like for him? And so I think we kind of hit that. I liked the Thirst because I thought we had some nice brotherly relationship, and then us fighting kind of side by side again. And I thought was really cool. The film's a little lighter fare than, or quite a bit lighter fare than Lost Boys, the original. So, I don't think they compare. I think it's, you know what I mean? But I think it's fun. I think it's a fun movie.
Well, what was your process like in going to revisit it as time had passed on, in terms of, okay, like you said, certain amount of time had passed and you're revisiting. So obviously you're at a different stage in life compared to when you were in 86, 87. And what's your process like when you're trying to, okay, where is this character now compared to where I was then?
I mean, I think with Alan Frog, I think I thought about really all the kind of trauma of fighting that much over the course of your lifetime. And we saw the Frog Brothers when they were teenagers, when they were pretty young teenagers, and how, that vision, and you're bound to get a little jaded over a period of time. And I didn't play like full on jaded, although, I mean, to an extent, maybe because there was, I don't want to give away some of the surprise of it, but so I think that, was part of the way in, that it was going to be darker. It was, by necessity, the character was darker. And I mean, that was the way it was written also. So I think that, and then, one thing that was a line that kind of keyed me in was, so in the Thirst, so, one of my famous lines, of course, in Lost Boys, the Eddie Munster line, and then, so it's, gets that reprise in the Thirst, and, holy shit, it's the attack of Grandpa Munster. And so I remember doing that, and I tried to do the line from Lost Boys a couple times, like at conventions, and I never really hit it, and I couldn't figure out why. And then with that line, I was doing it, and I was like, kind of playing for the laugh a little bit, the tiniest bit. And then I was like, I can't do that. That's what's killing it. And so that kind of helped me get back into the character a little, that line of like, oh yeah, we're not playing any of this for laughs. Like which is obvious, from the outside, but on the inside, to be able to be like, no, this is serious stuff here. I'm very, this whole Grandpa Munster thing, like, maybe I'm making a joke about it, but it's a serious thing, kind of taking that approach. Yeah.
Okay. What about staying focused on something and not getting too deep in the weeds, such as, oh, this project is going to be great, or just reading the script or whatever the case is. Oh, this is going to be the shit, sir. How do you stay focused to put the best project out there, but also not go one way or the other on that, if that makes sense?
Yeah, totally. I remember when I was, maybe not too long after Lost Boys, when I was like started to have some, some flexibility on the projects that I, did or chose or whatever, and so I was doing a bunch of different things, in order to, things that people never saw, even because, in certain levels of development or whatever. And I realized that if it was worth doing, that this is kind of what I told myself, if it was worth doing, wait, I don't know if there we go. If it was worth doing, it was worth doing well. It was worth doing right. And so, if I chose to do it, that no matter what it was, from that point till the time it's finished, it was worth doing right. So I think that's just kind of how I how I approached it. It's hard to know what to choose, what to do. I've made lots of mistakes, where to go, which project to choose, which project not to choose, and I think as long as I just felt like true to that, aside from my decision-making skills, if I chose to do something, I felt it was necessary to do it well, do it right.
Well, speaking of that, and I always reference an Eddie Murphy interview. It was on one of his comedy DVDs from his stand-up days. I believe it
Raw
was
or
Delirious.
Delirious, even better.
Yeah. And the interviewer asked him, because obviously it's been talked about for years, about him going back to stand-up. And the premise of him answering it was, I left on such a high note, I'd be scared to do it, to go back to it, because the fan base would expect a certain level. But he was also saying, if I did go back to it, there's so much more in my life that I could draw from, being married and divorced, having kids, this, that, just different beats that everybody goes through in life, right? And I think that could apply to acting and everything else. And one of the conversations I was listening to, you said you can draw from different emotions. Like, okay, I had kids, so I have certain empathies here and there. You know what I mean? Just different life experiences you had allows you to draw from. So, how would you say that's helped you as an actor and director?
So one of the things about me right now these days, and it's almost comical, like when I hang out with friends, is how quickly I can be reduced to tears, in talking about a particular subject, or how massively empathetic I am. And when I say empathetic, like, I really feel for lots of different things. I'll hear about something and I'll feel for that, and I could get emotional for that, and that's something that's come from that experience. And I remember when I was a kid and I was doing Lost Boys and doing everything, I was trying to be such an actor, man. I was so into like those big actors, Pacino and De Niro and everything, and I wanted that so much to have that accessibility with my emotions. I fought for that, really kind of all my life, and so I kind of feel like here I am. I have this ability now. It's something that deepens my, I feel I've always been a good actor, and able to bring a lot to different roles I've done. But this is something new. There's this level of, being able to bring emotion, pretty quickly. I can't quite cry on cue. Like if you were just like cry, I can't quite do that, but I could access most of those emotions within a few seconds or minutes.
Now, with that too, because no, go ahead. Sorry, you're going to say something.
Well, I just mean like it's sort of like, it was just sort of like an unfinished tying it to the question, which is just that that's something that right. You get the idea. That's a depth I have now that I didn't have back when I was Alan Frog.
Yeah. Well, speaking of that, because you've done many different characters, you've written, you directed, you've done the gamut through the years. Mm-hmm. So how would you say you find your center, per se, in Jamison Newlander? Because obviously when you go on an acting job and you go to, I'm going to go play a mayor in this film, or I'm going to play Alan Frog at different stages in a couple of different films, and you go these different directions, but how do you find your center so you're not bringing that other stuff home, if you catch the drift I'm going with that?
Yeah, totally. Like, how do I do all these things that are in some ways really different, and not let them bleed into each other in ways that, right? I mean, that make the other ones not work as well. I mean, I think that it's tricky. I think it's tricky. I think that these days, my life is, I mean, I don't want to call it chaotic completely, because people have really chaotic lives. And in certain ways, if you looked at me in my day-to-day life, a lot of it is pretty calm, but there's so much between like, marriage and, these two kids and the financial things that come with that. And then building an acting career and a writing career. And then building, I also built like more safe careers, that I'm also doing, to kind of balance it all out. And then, it's gotten to the point where I just kind of have to go. I just have to kind of flow with it and not try to make too much sense of it. And if I do a character in something and then I'm writing something later and it brings that character in, there's nothing I can really do about it. I just got to kind of roll with it. It's just too many balls in the air, I think, to try to control it too much,
Absolutely. Well, we're sitting here in September 2025. What does, besides Scarefest next month, what does the rest of the year look like for you? But are you looking already into 2026?
Yeah. So the things I got cooking. First of all, I'm also going this weekend. I'm going to be going to Arizona to what's it called? Gathering of the Ghouls in Arizona this weekend. And then the next week after that, I'm going to be doing a show in Orlando called Fanboy Expo. So we got a few things going this next couple of months. So, but then it's sort of the end of convention season for me. There's some other things that I might do. Screening here. I'm gonna do like a Halloween party, kind of thing. And then I do have some conventions booked already for 2026. In something in Florida and a couple of the things. And so those things I'm already booking into 2026. And the things that I'm working on are already sort of into 2026 in the sense that, we're not too far from the end of the year. At some point, there's not going to be so much more you can accomplish by the end of the year. And there's different projects I'm trying to get going. I have this one-man show I'm working on trying to develop Summer of 86 about, just being this kid and getting Lost Boys and then doing Lost Boys and meeting the Coreys and all these great actors and, all that incredible time that summer. And then there's like 2 other writing projects that I'm working on that also might turn into directing projects, and then also trying to just auditioning for things, sending in video auditions for all kinds of different stuff. So yeah, the planning's into 2026 already.
Well, final question. We've talked about you being a father and such, and your extensive knowledge of the business and the entertainment field. Would you recommend to your kids to get into it if they wanted to really pursue it?
Yes. In fact, my kids are starting to, we just got them headshots and my boys are 12, almost 13 and 17. I think that I wouldn't necessarily recommend it to anybody because, all the different pitfalls, all the different things that I think one needs to be aware of. I think that me and my wife, we're pretty aware of some of them, and the boys are already, there's a lot of awareness of things to look out for, in terms of predators and stuff like that. So I'm not worried about them per se. I think, it's always good to be a little worried, or a little bit protective. So I think with them, there's the issue, the larger issue of what is the business right now? There's so much that's it's not, it's the central, LA is less and less a central hub. I mean, it still is, but it's there's, stuff going on all around the country. What is that going to turn into? What's all these things. So I don't know that it's necessarily a business that's oh yeah, cool. This is a stable kind of family business you can go into, it is sort of the family business, but it's I wouldn't necessarily push the boys. I mean, I wouldn't push the boys in that direction because I don't know what the career looks like right now or into the future. But I also know that for both of them, they're really artistic and my wife's an actress as well. And so they've got it in their blood and you can see it. I don't know if it's that we the way we played with them or the way the sort of imaginatory, the imaginative play that we did with them and costumes that, dressing up as this and that, if that made them think in that way, or if there's something in the genes that makes them able to kind of play in that way, play make believe well enough potentially, So I'm going to let the boys do it if they're interested. We'll play it. We'll take it step by step.
But I'm hoping, or I guess it should be for me to hope, but I'm guessing you guys hope for some sort of education as well, for something more stable if things don't play out.
Yeah. I mean, the idea of potentially committing to a career in the arts or in film or everything, it's got to be carefully considered. They're both my boys are really smart and can do a lot of different things. So we'll see where it lands,
Absolutely. Well, Jamison, I'm looking forward to seeing you in Lexington in a few weeks.
Yeah.
Thank
awesome.
you so much.
Cool.
And it'll be fun. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it was great. Great talk. See you in a few weeks.
Hey folks, looking for the ultimate destination for the nerd enthusiasts and collectors? Well, we found the spot for you. Nerds Nest Collectibles is a haven for nerds, geeks, and fans alike, as they have many different products and certainly more to come. Make sure you go ahead and visit them at nerdsnestcollectibles.com. Check them out.
This is Jennifer Larn from Diamonds and Whiskey, and you are listening to Crazy Train Radio.